Good evening, everyone. My name is Sam, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our next virtual event with Nelson George and Lynell George, here to discuss Nelson's new book out today called The Darkest Hearts, a D-Hunter Mystery. We are so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this uncertain time, so thank you for taking the time out of your evening. And we'll be hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website by signing up for our newsletter, which is fun and has other info in it as well. So I would recommend, we do not spam, as well as our social media at Book Soup. Our next event is scheduled for tomorrow because we have a pretty busy week at 6 p.m. with Daniel Kraus in conversation with Brady Hendricks to discuss The Living Dead, George A. Romero's unfinished novel, which is now finished. This evening's virtual event will end with a Q&A, and to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, you can click the like button, and it'll bump it up a little bit, and we will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Also, please consider supporting our bookstore and Nelson tonight by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book. All you have to do is click on the green purchase button right at the bottom of the viewer screen, and it'll redirect you to our website, but it won't interrupt the conversation because it'll open in another window, and you can continue your checkout process there. And we are also selling digital audiobooks and ebooks through Libro FM and Kobo for those who prefer to listen. And with that said, let me introduce our guest speakers for this evening. Nelson George is an author, filmmaker, and lifelong resident of Brooklyn. His books include the first 4 novels in his D-Hunter mystery series, The Accidental Hunter, The Plot Against Hip Hop, The Lost Treasures of R&B, and To Funk and in LA, all available from Akashic Books. Among his many nonfiction works are The Death of Rhythm and Blues, Hip Hop America, and The Hippest Trip in America, Soul Train, and The Evolution of Culture and Style. As a filmmaker, he has directed the documentaries Brooklyn Boheme, Finding the Funk, which was just re-released on Amazon Prime, so you can find that there, and A Ballerina's Tale. He was also a writer-producer on the Netflix series The Get Down. Thank you for joining us. And Lynell George is a journalist and essayist. After Image, Los Angeles Outside the Frame is her first book of essays and photography, exploring the city where she grew up. As a staff writer for both the Los Angeles Times and LA Weekly, she focused on social issues, human behavior, visual arts, music, and literature. She taught journalism at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. In 2013, was named a USC Annenberg/Getty Arts Journalism Fellow, and in 2017 received the Huntington Library's Fellowship for her studies of California writer Octavia E. Butler. A contributing arts and culture columnist for KCET Artbound, her commentary has also been featured in numerous news and feature outlets, including Boom, A Journal of California, the Smithsonian, Los Angeles Review of Books, Vibe, Chicago Tribune, Washington Post, Essence, Ms. Magazine, and more. Her liner notes for Otis Redding, live at the Whiskey A Go-Go, earned a 2018 Grammy Award. We are so honored to have both of our guests, and without further ado, I'm going to turn the camera over to them both. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having us. Hello, Nelson.
Hey, so first of all, we're sister and brother, and we're not cousins.
No.
Let's establish that.
Yeah, let's just get
that.
So
we may way back, there may be some connection.
Maybe way back. We're going to do some work. People keep asking me, like, why don't you guys just do a family tree? So, when we have time.
Absolutely. So I'm so glad we're talking. You're one of my favorite writers. Your book, Crystal Stare.
Yes. No Crystal Stare. That's right.
Collection of essays. That was most of your LA Weekly stuff, right? I think.
Yes, absolutely.
So you survived the rise and fall of print journalism.
Oh my gosh.
We both have, actually.
Yeah, it's true.
And still here grinding it out. Thank God.
That's right. Fingers crossed. Yes.
So, I'm going to stop your flow.
Okay. Well, I wanted to say I'm thrilled that we're able to do this. It's not often we've been able to be in a room together for a while. I think I saw you a couple years ago at Book Soup.
Oh, God.
I think it was.
Yeah, this is an interesting, this experience. It's funny because on one hand, I probably have interacted with more people in a mass way through these mechanisms. Mm-hmm. But there will never be a replacement for that feeling of reading or writing or talking about your book with
Yes.
like-minded individuals in a room.
That's right.
It's just beautiful. And, because we spend so much time as writers alone,
Yes.
those moments when you actually see people who've read your books,
Exactly.
it's kind of amazing.
Yes.
Oh my, you actually read this thing, and let's sit down, let's have a drink.
I was going to say, it's the conversation. Like, you can finally have the real conversation, because, we've been conversing with them on the page, but,
Yes.
What they carry away with them, and, what has imprinted, that means so much more. And I was saying, to be the measure of success as a writer is not so much when people tell me like, wow, you did such a great job with this, but the stories they end up telling you about them after having read something. So if you inspire something, I love that. I know I did my work,
Absolutely. So this is an interesting medium to do this in, because we're reaching a lot of people, and we're happy that they're there, but we wish we could see them, and they all breathe on each other.
That's right. One day when we can breathe on one another again.
It's gonna be a minute, unfortunately.
Well, I'm gonna jump in, and we're gonna go a lot of different places, because this book goes a lot of different places. And my first question for you really is about the book's immediacy. I mean, you just dump us into the middle of this world, and it's like, it's so up to date with the news cycle. That's the other thing, that as I'm reading, it's like, it feels like screen grabs from, yesterday or an hour ago, and you were hopping planes, and we're streaming music, and there's all this buzzing commentary of political and social life. And as I'm just going to read like a list of things: James Comey, there's Zoom meetings. We talk about 45. We talk about police harassment of Black men, Black Lives Matter. And that chilling scene in DC, that happens with D, when he gets picked up, but we'll go into that later. And by extension, the issues that are happening in the Black community. So you're not just writing to the moment, you're writing of the moment. And I think that's pretty spectacular. But what was the impetus for this particular chapter in Dee's life? What made you go, this now? Because this is
it's funny, because I said the book is set in the first year of Trump's presidency.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the things that are happening with him and around him, and I'm throwing in Epstein and a bunch of other stuff, is that these rumors about the idea of human trafficking has been something, even in my last book.
Yes.
So I went to a friend of mine, Chloe Flower, who's a composer who worked on Ballerina's Tale.
Mm-hmm.
He's been working on human trafficking for a while. Mm-hmm. So she invited me to a meeting at the UN, and I met with the Human Trafficking Division of the UN. And they gave me a report. I have the 2016 Global Report on Human Trafficking. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting, and sitting with, it was a man and woman team who compiled this report, was how I think everyone thinks of human trafficking as girls from Russia being, but it is African girls being trafficked in Europe. If you go to Spain and Italy, a lot of the prostitution there are young Black women who thought they were going to be au pairs in Europe.
Oh, wow. Mm.
There's a whole world of Asian human trafficking, which a lot of it ends up in Canada, ironically, because the Canadians have been so open to the Chinese. So in Toronto have a lot of that. And not too surprisingly, I guess LA is one of the major centers of human trafficking in the world.
Wow.
Because there are people from all over. And this came through the report. Mm-hmm. So because of the history of the allegations around our president, current president.
Yes.
And the idea of how human trafficking is the underground economy permeating so much of business in the world today. Mm-hmm. I thought, well, there's something there. And there's a character that I had in the previous book, so I really brought forward, which is Serene Powers, who's kind of a woman who is dealing with the idea of human trafficking and becomes a part of a sort of, I mean, that might be another book, the whole thread, but the idea that she's a human trafficking avenger.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's a badass.
Yeah. And actually, there was also she was based. And a lot of this is based on my journalistic research. I started going back,
I was gonna
and
ask that. Yeah.
I started asking about the WMMA fighters and the women MMA fighters. Um, unspoken a lot. There's a lot of sexual abuse or sexual harassment in the U.S. military.
Mm.
And I read all these cases. I began going and reading these cases of women being attacked in latrines at night,
Yeah.
and this kind of stuff. So, underlying the Trump years, and I think it's going to come out even more, is this question of this Me Too, the idea of sexual harassment. Women have been fighting on different levels for respect. And so I thought, well, that's one of the themes that I want to work with, because it works on it's an international problem.
Right.
There are local manifestations of it. Like the guys in Atlanta, the whole thread that happens in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And that's based on the fact that a lot of the hood where we think of the pimp from the 70s, 80s, the new pimping is online trafficking.
Mm.
And young women, there's a lot of talk about stripping being empowering, but there's also this other world where women are exploited.
Right.
And through there's houses that are set up that girls are doing these digital you pay money, these digital sex rooms.
Right.
So I felt like all of these things are part of this era, and that as we look at what's going on with our morality.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, we have a very powerful movement for women and female empowerment, but there's all these other forces that are going on that are at odds with that.
Mm-hmm.
For working class women particularly, and also poor women around the world, there's still a great deal of exploitation.
I was going to say the vulnerability. Yeah. So
that was a big part of inspiring that, and it becomes a big thread throughout the entire book, because I felt it's going to be a male writer writing. How do I can't write from the point of view of a woman extensively, but I can sort of lay out some of the issues that are that from the point of view of how men are exploiting women and how that can play out.
Right. And even just opening the book in the strip club, right. So you see this, here's the menu, and this is, and how it's been normalized, when you make that point of like, oh, we're going to have a meeting here when people are going to take their girlfriends, and this is where we are now,
Yeah. So so there's that character. He's a trap star.
Right.
And his manager is a guy from that world, or his street manager / bodyguard.
Right.
And at the same time, you have a character who's a Kurtz, who is basically in the heart of darkness.
Heart of darkness, right.
And he represents, on one hand, he's an exploiter of women and has his own perversions. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, he, and this plays into this idea of immediacy. One of the things that really comes up when you look at the Trump years is there's so many people who have supported him in the tech business and in other businesses who make money off youth culture.
Right.
In various ways, right?
Right.
We always see youth culture entrepreneurs as being part of the left.
Right.
But in fact, a lot of them are part of the right.
Mm-hmm.
Big enablers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to see how these two worlds intersected. And, in the world of hip hop, having your own brand.
Right. Which is,
I got my own brand. I have my own alcohol. I have my own whatever.
Right.
But who are you in business with?
Right. Exactly.
And what's going on? What are the trade-offs of that business?
Right.
So the whole book kind of hinges on an endorsement deal.
Right. Exactly.
Our lead, our Lil Daye,
yes.
who's managed by D, my main character.
D.
He's a great deal. He's going to get the Ciroc of the South. I love that.
Right.
Sincere, which is basically obviously a ripoff of Puffy's thing. But it comes out later that this guy is a Trump supporter. That Kurtz is a Trump supporter. He's involved in privatized prisons, and we make the leap. And I make the leap in the book that these things are all connected.
Right.
that the more people you get drunk, the more people you get incarcerated,
right,
and so on and so forth.
and you
that
can control more and control people.
Absolutely, because once you control their population, you control their vote.
Right.
It may be, at first when I wrote that, I mean, I actually had some feedback. Are you crazy? You're going too far. But as we've seen the threads
right.
of the Trump years,
right.
There's a lot of interconnection. And you can see the way this administration is giving who they hire to run these different departments of government. It's all people, everything is someone who's business benefited from either government policies or actual getting money from the government.
Right.
So I feel like that I don't feel like that the conspiracy in the book is as far-fetched as it may.
It's far-fetched, exactly. Yeah, no, not at all. Given what we're living.
Exactly.
Given what we're living. I wanna stop you here because I wanna ask about Dee.
Right.
Because he's a really complex character. He has had many different identities and former lives, and he's a man of conscience. He's struggling with it. He's trying to maintain it. His center in a corrupt world. Tell if a reader hasn't come to any of these books, tell me a little bit about Dee and his background.
Well, it's interesting because I've been thinking a lot about why I came up with him. It's 5 books. We're 5 books in with him. And three things started him as a character. One was seeing a picture of Britney Spears.
Okay, I would not expect that one.
There's Britney Spears, and there's this huge black guy because she was so short, he towered over her. And I said, who's that guy?
Yeah.
Right? So I began thinking about the world of these men who see everything, protect everyone, keep their secrets, and keep them safe.
Yes.
So that's one of the roots of Dee. The other was an article I read in the New York Times. It was a family in Brownsville, which is an area I'm from in Brooklyn, a notoriously bad neighborhood since the 40s. It's always been bad. And there was a family that during the height of the crack era, there was a son who was murdered in 87, 89, and 91. And basically all 3 sons in the family. And I thought, what if you were the 4th son?
Yeah.
How would you deal with all that tragedy? So, and the third thing was that my sister has been HIV positive since like 92. And I thought, we see these big black men, they have security on them or a suit, and people see them as invulnerable.
Right.
But what if they have this weakness or this illness that they're protecting and hiding?
Right.
So sexuality is very, so he's an amalgam of all 3 elements. And what's interesting in the novels, and this is sort of my journey, my sister's journey. In the first book, the HIV, the first 2 or 3, the HIV issue is very, very much a part of the story in his life. What's interesting is that my sister has survived into her, she'll be pushing up on 60 soon.
Wow.
She lived for, 25 years now with the virus. And actually does very well, and hardly takes the medication. And seems to have her T cell count is really good. Right. So I feel like if that in her life, that is an issue, but it's not paramount anymore.
Right.
And so that's a part of the journey of Dee as well, is that this idea that he has normalized, it's still there, but it's not dominating his consciousness
in the way it could have been or was.
Or was, absolutely.
Yeah. So he's lived that arc.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk to you too about, hustle, and what's so beautiful about this book too, is we see these multi-generational men, who all have their hustle on. Yeah. And you have such a great ear for dialogue. I mean, the things, these conversations that these men are having when they're having breakfast together or having the milkshake, at the diner, or when they're at the Four Seasons, or there's that one line where I can't remember where they were, but he was talking about this woman. He goes, well, you had that millennial woman on the phone talking about stuff I didn't understand. But what what really struck me was all these men had to make a way for themselves in an
Yeah.
alternative economy.
Yes.
And they had to be creative, and they had to be able to turn on a dime and and make something happen. And they have been for decades. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is for African American communities and families? And because that to me is like the center, because all the characters, they've got their hustle.
Yeah, I think that comes from I was sort of around the music business to some degree, the entertainment business, as well as the drug business,
Mm-hmm.
and just guys who had everyday, guys selling fake watch Rolexes and
Yes.
whatever else they were doing. And I realized that there are different levels of people. Think of people who there are. A hustler is not the same thing as a thug.
Exactly.
There's these different variations. And the hustlers guys are the ones who interest me.
Mm-hmm.
There is a thuggish guy, Ice, in it.
Yes.
But most of the people in there are people who, okay, I didn't get the chance to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't get the chance to get the white collar job. How do I find my way in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I manage to be myself and not give away too much of myself in the process?
Exactly.
Trying to survive. And so, I mean, Dee, for example, he starts off, he's a security guard back in.
Yes.
Then he kind of moved up and had his own security company. Then he began getting more involved in like sort of helping vaguely managing some of the artists. He was mentored by an older black man, Dwayne Robinson, who was sort of like me, I guess. That I just who ends up getting murdered in the second book.
Yes.
Which I really enjoyed. That was fun.
Killing your character.
Yeah, it was great. It was really fun. But so those mirror a lot of the experiences of a lot of the men I've had, because someone has to often, everyone talks about these issues of fatherhood in the black community, but almost all of the black men who have been successful or just had a decent life, they have a father figure who comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not the best person.
Yes.
But it is someone who tells them how you survive in this particular space. That space could be jail. That space could be hip hop. That space could be just, guys who run a corner bodega.
Yes.
And so that thread to me, it's kind of what really animates the books, because the reason I wanted to do the books actually was all of these characters. Edgecombe Lennox, there's a character. There's another character, Fly Tie.
Yes, Fly Tie.
These are all people based on men that I have encountered,
mm-hmm.
who one became a cop or one is in the record business. They're people who had to figure out how to live and survive. Mm-hmm. Some of this is informed by my relationship with, we'll talk about this later, but this summer I had several very important men in my life die. Mm-hmm. And several of the characters in the book are based on them, mm-hmm. or informed by them, I guess is a better way. Mm-hmm. Working class guys or vaguely middle class, but almost none of them were traditional 9-to-5ers who went to good school and moved in.
Right.
I know those people, but they're not as interesting to write about.
Right. You want the ones that have a little shadow. Like, where do they go off to? I don't know that whole story.
Absolutely.
Things that keep you asking these questions.
Absolutely.
Try to fill them in, as a writer.
Absolutely. I think that's actually interesting about and black men are interesting in that most brothers I know never tell you everything. Mm-hmm. There's always doorways and corridors that you're not allowed into.
Right.
And damn near they don't want to go into.
No, exactly.
So that sense of a sense of mystery or a sense of they don't self-express. They're not going. They're not going to go to see shrinks.
No, and even Dee, Dee is trying to. There's that really beautiful line about when Dee realizes, well, wait a second, I'm kind of running away from myself as well. I have, I've contributed to myth making, my own, who really am I? And so, he's been trying to get centered since he's been in Los Angeles doing his yoga, trying to but I mean, he's really struggling with self, what's the story I want to tell? Not the story that's handed to me.
Yes, it's really, I think there's also, this me as an individual trying to looking at myself and then looking at the various men I've met. It's funny because I think a lot of what I'm going after is that, I'm 62 and a lot of people I know have died.
Yeah.
Which says a lot about Black mortality. And I'm not talking about being shot by the police.
No, I'm just talking about short lifespans.
Short lifespans, based on drinking, based on bad food, based on hypertension.
Right.
And so a lot of the book is about these various men who are in different spaces trying to figure out, how do I get to the next place in my life? And how do I find some sense of self?
And joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, joy is a big, joy. I mean, it's a big thing, Black joy.
Yeah, it is.
Sometimes we forget about it.
Yeah, because we have so much else on our shoulders.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm looking at the time. I want to make sure I make time for so much. I have so many questions. I wanted to talk about music, but we can move back to that because music is such of course, a huge part of this. And what struck me too is how cities fit into this.
Yes.
So this is, and it's really important, so, we're all over LA, Atlanta, New York,
London.
Yeah, exactly. And not only are we in this place, it's not just a map, you're telling us a history of the music and what specifically came from each of these places. And I was really impressed with this because I thought it was so important for people to know, well, this is the through line. Can you talk about why that was important for you? I know you're, of course, you're a music writer, but I felt like there's something else going on, and I don't want to jump on what I think it was. But
tell me what you think it is, please. What do you think? Tell me what
we need to tell our stories.
Yes.
Because they go, and before, especially with music, things happen so fast, and people jump on the next thing and the next thing, and they claim it.
Yes.
Going back to branding,
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's funny because the idea of for me, doing these books is also to me like a secret history of Black music.
Yes.
Because a lot of stuff that I would write about, even some of the nonfiction books I've done, there's still stuff you can't say for reasons or moral reasons or and here I feel a lot more liberated. I mean, the excerpts from the Dwayne Robinson's book there in the book. I mean, I just said, "Oh, I'm just gonna go."
I was wondering. I was like, "Is this Nelson just?"
I'm just going like, okay.
This piece I have always wanted to write.
Exactly, and I'm just gonna say like, "Yo, this thing sucks," instead of like trying to be elegant about it.
Right.
Because it's a guy's book from he's been dead for 2 books. He's been dead for 2 books.
Right.
Maybe 3 books now. Yeah. So it's the voice of an angry middle-aged Black man. Which I think
so I'm going to create the space to do that.
Exactly. Because it's funny because I think about that a lot. I mean, taking in the fact that I've lived through when I first started writing about music, there was funk, disco,
right,
and there was jazz,
right.
and R&B, and then how R&B changed, and then hip hop comes up, and there's trap music, and there's other derivations, and so how certain kinds of Black culture, blues, all of those people that I got to see Muddy Waters, I got to see Bobby Blue Bland, they're all dead.
Yeah.
And interesting now is that all the soul icons,
yes, exactly,
Aretha, James, are all. Not all, but most of the major ones
a lot of them
are gone. So that some of these characters for me are embodiments of certain aspects of that music.
Right.
And the wrestling with the legacy, that's why this character Knight is very important.
Yes.
I've been writing about Knight for even before I did the noir novels, he shows up in some of the earlier novels. And you know, because I know pretty well, I know I've had a lot of contact with D'Angelo and Maxwell and that generation of Black singers, and I know they're not the first, but you know, they were in some ways one of the last soul generation.
Yes. Yep.
And so now they're still around. They're, you know, D'Angelo makes great records when he finally makes them.
Right.
Maxwell still tours and he still sells out arenas.
Right.
But they're kind of like over here in the culture because everything's about hip hop and about youth.
Right. Right.
So he's the character who's wrestling with his where do I fit in?
Where do I fit in? And so all these collaborations he's doing.
Yeah.
And right.
He's trying to figure out how do I and I think that's also the issue of that kind of Black music.
Right.
You know, all of that Jill Scott and Erica and there's a whole group. I mean, you know, Raphael Sadiq.
Right.
Fantastic musicians, you know, who still are vital. They're not even 50, most of these guys.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Right.
But you know, how do you stay relevant in a culture that's about the next hot, you know, person on auto tune?
Always. It's like, you know, you're always looking behind your shoulder.
Yeah. So those things are very much a part of my thinking about the world. And so I'm constantly thinking about where these people belong now and how do they define your lives now.
Right, right. Yeah, and what soil it came out of, you know.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and that was so resonant to me, you know, as we're moving around the book, like, okay, this happened here for this reason, and this happened here for this reason, and they're all interconnected, and we need to know why.
Well, you know what? LA's been great. I've done the last two books. Last book, previous one, the Funkin' Dine in LA, was all in LA. This one takes largely part in LA. And actually, we were talking about this earlier. The village nature of LA lends itself to these kinds of stories.
Yes.
Because I forgot. I think that one point Night is in Highland Park.
Yes, and Echo Park.
Echo Park, right? And so these are areas that resonate in a certain way.
Exactly.
The kind of people live there, the kind of music that's played there, as opposed to what will be happening, you know, in West Hollywood.
Right. Exactly. And and the cross pollinations that happen too, depending upon the neighborhood that you're in. Yeah.
And you know, I love that about for me there's Hollywood and there's LA.
Right. Absolutely. And
so
they're really different.
Yeah. So Dee is the character, and there's a lot of the storytelling in the book is about this Malibu and there's West Hollywood. There's also one of my favorite scenes in the book is Night just sitting. Dee Hunter just sitting by the Santa Monica Promenade.
Oh yeah.
Santa Monica, looking out at the ocean.
At the ocean.
And just thinking, oh wow.
But he doesn't want to let his guard down.
Yes, he doesn't.
Like there's that one scene where he's like, they want to. I think it's when is it when Serene comes back and she suggests they go to the beach, and he's like, oh no, I don't. Because that was his place to be calm and open. I'm not ready to be that. So back to let me just shutter off these things I don't want to talk about.
Code shifting is huge for Black people.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of the book. It's a huge part of the storytelling in the book.
Yep.
Everyone.
Absolutely.
Around.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, so back to what you said, you actually started to answer this question. It was like, yes. You're a man of many talents, you write in many different genres, modes, screenplays, television, documentaries, long form journalism, fiction. What does fiction allow you to do that you can't do elsewhere? And what was it about mysteries that you thought this is the way to go in?
I always loved mysteries. I love Chinatown. I remember seeing Chinatown at the theater in Times Square when I must have been 13 or 14. And it was really, maybe I've been older, but it was really, really hit me. I might have been. And that led me to Chandler. It led me to Dashiell Hammett, which then led me eventually to Chester Himes.
Yeah.
And wow.
Yeah.
I knew Cotton Club to Harlem was a movie.
Right.
I had no idea that there was this catalog.
Yes.
That was fantastic. Yeah. And surreal.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah.
Like he didn't give a fuck.
No.
So the possibilities of that, and then obviously when Mosley came out, I think particularly Devil in a Blue Dress.
Right.
So I always been interested in noir or crime stories, and then I realized that the world I lived in as a journalist was a world of nocturnal activity.
Yes, it's true.
I spent, from 1970, from college, really 77, 78, till I left Billboard in, I think I left Billboard like the summer of 89. I spent almost my entire college years and all my 20s in a music world where I was around the legitimate hustle, illegitimate hustle, and in New York and LA primarily, though also a little bit in Atlanta. And I was able to go to Studio 54 when I was like 20 years old because I was a journalist. But I also was up in,
that press card is good.
And it gets you places.
Yep.
At the same time, I was also in, I dealt with a lot of Brooklyn, Harlem stuff. Happened in Brooklyn back then. It happened. And, some griminess. So I felt like all these worlds, I think the beautiful thing about being a journalist and how this feeds into the fiction is you're in all these different worlds. The thing about journalism often is you have rules that you have to follow.
Right.
What it can and cannot, who's speaking, what are your, blah, blah, blah. Where fiction, you have none of those. You can just,
right.
And I love that. I love the fact that I can really dive into some of the storytelling and some of the people that I met, some of whom I don't even really like.
Right.
But I can really free to write about them in a way that I didn't find that same freedom in doing nonfiction. I mean, I love nonfiction, but it's a different business.
Right. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite mode to be in now, or it's really just?
I think everything is storytelling.
It's storytelling. That.
And I think that's what's really comes to. People say, I do this. I go to London once a year. I've been doing these for young people of color in London. They don't have a lot of infrastructure there. So I talk about initially it was screenwriting class, but I realized it was storytelling class.
Oh, that's great.
Because really it was more important to talk about what a story is.
Yes.
How stories work and the different techniques you can use, some of which are from cinema, some of which are from literature, some of which are from, even from TikTok. So I feel like all of them doing everything you were saying, I do a lot of things, but to me, it's all storytelling.
The same thing. That's really interesting. Yeah. And you're right. I think, when I was teaching, what I realized, for so many students, because they don't read newspapers like we did growing up. And so the idea of what a story, not a topic, when you're going to pitch me a story, you have to pitch me something that has some kind of structure, and it can change. What you may end up doing is going to change because reporting always changes something, but you got to give me the bare bones of what a story is. And it's an arc, so this makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. Now, you mentioned fly tie, and I want to get back to this for us to jump into the next thing, because I'm looking at our time and I want to let people ask some questions. But so fly tie is Dee's surrogate father. He mentions that that's what he is. And Dee said, it says when Dee's father departed for parts unknown, fly tie kind of filled in, and he's a character. But it does bring me to this question about you and your personal life. And you wrote this magnificent piece about your father that appeared earlier this year. And a father you had spent a lot of time chasing his ghost and then ducking him and, all kinds of different things. And then he passed this year of COVID. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about writing that piece, researching that piece, and I'm hoping you are going to be doing something formal, another formal thing with it. I hope it opens the door to something else for you.
Well, short version is that my father and my mother broke up when I was about 3 years old, 3, 4. And as he he was a fleeting figure in my life up to my college years. At which point, by the time I got to my late 20s, I was like, I didn't give a damn.
Right.
So when he reached out to me, and he did reach out to me a number of times over the next 20, 25 years, I didn't care.
Right.
I felt like I already had really great mentoring through a bunch of friends.
Right.
I had made my life.
Right.
And whatever, my mother had done a great job with me. So
Yes.
where do you fit into where I am now?
Right. Right.
I don't really.
What do I need now? Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So my mother and actually my nieces were all like, you gotta go, you should talk to them, whatever. So a year ago, 2019, April, I finally went up there. He lived in Harlem, and we sat for several hours, and I got a real understanding of him as a man, not as my father, but who are you? Why did you make the decisions you made?
Right.
What was the life that I never knew nothing about? There's all these gaps. Right. And it was an amazing conversation, which made me understand one thing which was also his relationship with his father.
Right.
Which was like a central piece that I never really had even thought about how they affected each other.
Yes.
How that would affect me.
Right.
And so I left the meeting, thinking, oh, this is who this guy is. I understand him. I'm not mad at him anymore. There's no point in being. But I do understand a lot more about who he was and how he viewed himself.
Right.
How he the decisions he was making about his life. And then we kept in contact, obviously, over the next year. And then literally, April, got COVID. He was 86.
Wow.
And I was with him. One thing that's not in the piece that you read is that I was with him about an hour before he died.
Oh wow.
So that revelation and that reconnection has had a profound effect on me. And I've written a lot more about him. I've also written a whole nother essay about my mother.
Oh wow. Okay.
And as well as so I've been interviewing and talking with different Black men partly about their relationship with their fathers, but also I've been looking at men throughout my life who have died. So the book is very much about death. I mean, since my father died, Andre Harrell, who was a good friend of mine, Uptown Records mogul, died of a heart attack. Another guy named Robert Rocky Ford, he was the guy who more or less was my real life fly tie. He died at age 70 of natural causes. So and that happened like literally April. Within 4 weeks, all three of these men died.
Wow.
So I've been grappling with that and writing. I got 50,000 words, so we'll see what else comes with it.
Wow, since April.
Yeah.
Wow.
So also yeah.
Wow.
So it's been pouring out of me actually. And so in a way, the book is also these books are especially the Darkest Heart is very much about it's informed by what happened me meeting my father, because I think I finished the book around the time of that time. And so the relationship with Fly Tie, and some of those themes are very and also very, and even the Amos Pilgrim character are very connected to my feelings about older Black men and their relationships with younger ones.
I wanted to, and I'm looking to see if are there any questions out there. I'm gonna throw out another. Okay, I see some. Here we go. Great. Okay. I have a couple more, but I'm gonna dip into this. Somebody's saying, your honesty with Black culture and Black maleness as it relates to dominant culture is real refreshing. Any advice for those of us with stories to tell and own our stories, how to get past the gatekeepers? It's a really excellent question.
What's funny is that this medium of the technology is actually allowing us to do that. I mean, I do a blog now, which I was like, I'm never blogging. What is that?
A blog. Yeah,
But it's one of the things that sort of happened. I think Yasmin. It's one of the things that happened was that I now have something called the Nelson George mixtape, which is a blog I do. I've done my father's death actually opened up a floodgate. Let's be
of creativity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the blog is an output. I think a blog these days, especially when you have places like Medium, where you can actually, reach a lot more people and actually make some money off of your blogging. I think it's a great site. In fact, Yasmin, you should look at Zora, which is one of the platforms on Medium, which is all about Black women's issues. So there's a lot of you can do it. There actually is a way to make some revenue off of it as well. So it's not like sending it out into the universe. So I've been doing a lot more of all of that. I think that there's no reason to let gatekeepers get your story out. And as you build your audience, you build a following. It's funny because I'm actually doing some piece for the New York Times now, and like that used to be the goal, is to get a piece. Yeah. And not that I'm very happy to be writing for them, but that's not I don't see that now as the end all and be all of what I'm doing. Which at one point it was like, yo.
Oh yeah, of course.
So now it's about, there's so many different ways to express yourself. And again, you can work with the gatekeepers at the Times and know that that's not going to end all. That's not going to be the only piece. That piece will come out, and whatever it does. But you can do 5 or 6 other pieces that's not dealing with their editorial vision. It's just yours.
It's right.
So I think the flexibility is something that younger writers have that we didn't when we came up, where we had to work into the format of whatever institution.
Exactly. And you don't get pigeonholed either. Like, you can work in different modes, if you're blogging, and this idea of like being able to do your own photography, do your own video, do your own, like be able to like kind of get these skills up, and sharpen them. And then, as you said, you're building an audience and people are coming to you. Yeah. And I kind of wish we had that too, to be able to also establish your voice, strengthen your voice, those sorts of things, rather than kind of waiting in line and like, oh no, we already have somebody that's going to write about XYZ. We don't need yours. We don't need your little commentary, like. So
we're with The Voice. I mean, it was always a race. Can I get to review this record for Greg Tate and Harry Allen, or Barry Michael Cooper, or Lisa Jones gets it?
Right.
Now it doesn't really matter.
No, you can put your take out there.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the beautiful things about now. Right. I mean, I think I had definitely like a lot of older. I had to adjust to that.
Yeah.
But and there's also, another reason why I do a lot of different kinds of work, because it's fun sometimes not to have to be the person in charge.
Yes.
One of the things I'm working on now, I'm an EP on a Tupac Shakur series. Mm-hmm. But I'm not directing it. I'm just part of the storytelling team.
Right.
And it's very liberating because I just have, my job is to research and interview people.
Right.
And sort of inform the story, but I'm not telling.
It's not all on your shoulders.
Exactly.
Let's see. So, okay.
Oh, this is I know this woman.
Okay, Yasmin. I just self-published the book "Spirit of an Outlaw: The Untold Story of Tupac."
Yeah, I know. I had that book actually.
Wonderful.
She said it's
because I wanted to preserve the truth of the story. Beautiful.
And the photography is amazing. So that's a good example. I mean,
perfect example.
So just real quick, the Nelson George mixtape exists in 3 different mediums. Mm-hmm. There's a Nelson George mixtape blog,
right,
which is on Substack. There's a Nelson George mixtape radio show, which you do once a month with those people, art form radio out in
Highland Park.
And there's Nelson George mixtape book, which I did independently, much like Yasmin. So, and I, sold through an independent publisher. So I would never have done all that stuff 20 years ago.
Right. But now you can, and and you have access, and people have access to you too. That's the other thing about having your audience.
Scary times.
Yeah. Well, like, okay, just we're talking about Highland Park and the mixtape, and I think this is a good time to talk about living here part time in LA.
Yeah.
So Light D, who is also, he's, living in two places on both coasts. I remember you said something a while to me, and it's stuck with me. Probably the last time I saw you at Book Soup, about it wasn't so much you were leaving New York, but New York had changed so much around and under you that it wasn't like leaving the place that you called home.
Yes.
Essence, like, and that really stuck with me about like places that change and gentrification. So what has it been for you to find a place here in Los Angeles, and also to kind of like hold on to the things that really matter to you about New York? Because place is clearly important to you.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, it's funny. Number one, I have a lot of friends who used to live in New York and LA.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big part of it. Like Andre, who died.
Yeah.
There's also a part of it, which is I found Echo Park. I found Highland Park.
Yeah.
I found these neighborhoods, which were not originally, I never really knew existed, but kind of following music.
Right.
Going to Echoplex.
Right.
What is that beautiful venue in Highland Park?
The one above the
yes,
which I can't think of the name of, but I know, right on Figueroa. Yeah.
It's the something room, maybe.
Yeah,
it's beautiful venue.
I've only been to a party there. I haven't been to hear music yet, though.
It became my go-to venue.
Okay.
I do it all the time when things are out.
Yeah.
And then the guys from Adrian Young and the whole posse, they do their it's a record store / beauty shop, art forum. Studio.
Oh yeah, that place is great.
Yeah, and so
that's in there in the afternoons just to listen to records.
What is it? So that's where the radio show that I do it once a month there. They do it every Thursday on Worldwide FM. Okay. So I found a community of like-minded individuals.
Okay.
There's a bunch of guys that work with on the Get Down TV show
that
I still hang out with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that whole side of LA. I love Park and the people I see there.
Right.
At the same time, I'm in the middle right now. I'm sort of living near the Grove because I can go that way, but also have friends who live in Venice.
Right.
And one thing about
in the middle.
Yes, that's the challenge of Los Angeles is that when you're east and west, you're making commitment to a lifestyle. You make commitment to your set of friends because once you get so far east or too far west, other people outside of town, you ain't seeing that much.
That's very true. There are people I see out of town who live literally out of the state more than I see people who live on the west side sometimes because of that, because of the traffic,
And that's sort of what I wanted to explore a bit in this book, The Darkest Hearts. A lot of it happens. He has an office in West Hollywood, on Sunset. But there's a lot of this story takes place. There's this dichotomy in the valley, and some of it takes place in Malibu. A lot of key stuff happens in Malibu, which is another world completely.
Yeah.
And it
really was a whole other world.
Yeah. Exactly. And then Soho House Malibu. So I like to use. I love places, and I love the idea of what a place means, and when you go to these places, and how it shapes the conversation.
Yes.
That happens, and
absolutely.
Who you talk to these places.
Right.
So yeah, I do love. I love. I'm a wanderer.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly. So I mean, I have all these friends in LA when I'm there who go like, "Where were you last night? You went to this blah blah blah." Yeah, it's because.
Well, sometimes I can't tell based on your Instagram. Is he still in LA or is he in New York? I thought he was in LA because you're here then there, So yeah.
I'm moving back and forth, and I find it's been quite exciting. I think that a lot of great from a music point of view.
Yeah.
LA has a lot of great. The current generation of Terrace Martin and Kamasi Washington.
Yes.
And, Anderson .Paak. There's so many. This generation has kind of come up together and it kind of riffled out through the culture. Fantastic. There's a new band. What is the new band? It's called Dining. There's some band that Robert Gasper.
Oh, yes.
Canarsie Washington, a bunch of those guys have done.
Yeah.
To me, that's not happening to the same level in New York right now for any number of reasons. So I love that sense of LA. You know, that's my biggest sadness. One reason I came back here. I'm used to being in LA, being able to go down to dinner party. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian.
I'm used to being able to go down to what's that downtown LA? They have the outdoor California
Plaza. Oh yeah. Oh, I've seen so many great acts there and performance. Yeah.
That's not happening. So a lot, you know. So a lot of things that I like about LA are kind of on hold.
Yeah.
So I do. So I feel like, well, New York is, you know, it's not COVID free, but it's a little COVID freer. So
COVID freer.
I would say COVID free. That's where we are right now. It's not about no, it's COVID free, but
no.
You know, I'm a little less afraid of getting it than, you know, walking by the Grove. If I go by the Grove now, I gotta, like, you know, I gotta.
Yeah,
muscle.
I can only. Yeah, I can't.
I think we have a question. Ask. What's this?
You have one? I haven't seen.
Yeah, inspiring to hear. I recently. Oh, here's an interesting question. I recently read that you get more creative as you get older, but how do you think your creative process has changed?
Mm.
You know, like I said, you know, it's I'll be 63 in a month, and I must say, I think one of the things that happens as you get older is you're not as afraid to fail because you failed a lot and you didn't die. You know what I mean? You failed and you got. I'm still here. And so I think it gives you a certain confidence. And also, I've succeeded in a bunch of stuff.
Right.
So I feel capable of doing a lot of things. I don't want to do a lot of things. I want to do a few good things, but I feel capable of doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I also think that the idea, and this is the idea of mortality as well, is okay, I'm be 63. Okay, how many years I got? Okay, maybe I got 20 if I'm good, right?
If you keep doing your yoga.
Exactly, I'm doing yoga and working out. So what is it that I want to accomplish with this time? And so I'm a much clearer about this is the time, these are the capabilities that I have,
right? And
these are the things I can accomplish. I also think you get better. I think you become a better collaborator. I think there's a lot of egocentric stuff that happens in your 20s and 30s about
you. Interesting. Yeah.
And I think now I just want to see good work done, and and so it's fun to. I always have my books that I do myself, but when I work on all these other projects, it's like I can work with this director, I can work with this actor. Oh, that's really interesting to see how they do their thing, and it's kind of fun.
Right.
It's fun having that sense of collaboration.
Right. And building something new, brand new. Right.
I think I enjoy all of that much more than I ever did.
That's interesting. You wanted to mention, I'm looking at our time.
Who do I enjoy reading?
Okay.
You see it?
Yes. Who do you enjoy reading?
Who do I enjoy reading? Well, you know, I just read Invisible Man again for the first time in a long time. And wow, Invisible Man, written in 1954, published in 1954, is as contemporary as any piece of writing you could read.
Yeah.
Roz the Destroyer, so much the critique of black colleges, the critique of the Communist Party and white liberalism. Everything in that book, and it's brilliantly written on top of all of that. So Ellison, I love. I revisit Richard Wright, a lot of his books. I try and read The Great Gatsby once a summer. It's a summer book.
Right. For the language?
Yes, the language and just the sense of, there's something about, it feels humid. There's something about
it does feel.
You really feel that. So,
yes.
And I read a lot of nonfiction. I'm actually reading a lot about Willie Mays. There's a couple of big books came out on Willie Mays, and he was someone that I took for granted as a certain kind of person. and have gotten to really the complexity of being the guy after Jackie Robinson.
Yeah. Yes.
And his relationship to New York City, coming from Birmingham, Alabama, and so all this. So I've been reading a lot of stuff like that. So I guess that's a good answer. I guess
that's a good answer. I wanted you to talk about since we're like just at an hour. About what's up next and what's happening and finding the funk.
Right. So, as you know, I've been doing a lot of docs, so especially the last 10 so years, 10, 15 years. And I did one in 2012 called Finding the Funk, which is basically a celebration of funk music. Funk music is the stepchild of Black music. There's a million books and documentaries on soul. There's a million books and documentaries on hip hop. There's very little literature on funk and very few documentaries. Right. There's a lot of reasons for that, I assume, but I felt like I wanted to make sure I got Sly, which was an amazing experience. Getting Bootsy, I got George Clinton. I did a whole thing on Dayton, Ohio, which people don't appreciate. Dayton, Ohio, the Ohio players, Zap, Roger, Slave. So many people came out of that town. So it was a labor of love. It came on VH1, but I had to do a 44-minute cut of the history of fucking funk. So it's been a little bit of a laborious thing, clearing certain samples and blah, blah, blah. Right. We finally got it back out. It's 90 minutes. So a lot of stuff that wasn't in the TV version, a lot of people who weren't in the TV version. From Ian Davenport, from the Brand New Heavies, to Reggie Hudlin, the director. So it's a longer, more comprehensive view of funk. And it just finally got it out on Amazon Prime just Sunday.
Wow. Okay. So we can access it now.
Oh, absolutely. You can rent it. You can rent it. You can buy it. Tell your friends.
That's right. We can finish our evening with Nelson George by watching Finding the Funk. Right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, the Sly section is worth it. You can just fast forward to the Sly interview. It's amazing.
I can't even imagine what I would do in a room with Sly Stone. I'm such a Sly head. That must have been just amazing to just be able to sit with him.
He's like the great white whale of
yes, he is.
And it was hilarious. He's brilliant and funny and kind of crazy, all at the same time. Very aware of what he did. Really aware at the same time. He's got a twinkle in his eye that's just so lovely.
Yeah.
So that was just getting to talk to Sly for an afternoon. Yeah. That was everything.
That's great. Are there any more questions out there? I guess not. Okay. Is Sam there?
I am here. Coming on.
Hi, Sam. So I think.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Nelson. Lynell, thank you. This was an amazing conversation. It was really wonderful to have you both. Please support Nelson's book release and purchase at the green button below if you haven't already. And I'm sure we have the rest of the series on our website, so you can find those as well. And everyone have a wonderful night.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your night.
Oh, Lynell, thank you so much. Love, I owe you a dinner when I come back to LA.
Yay! Okay. Okay. All right. It was wonderful. Thank you for having us. Thank you guys for all watching.
You too. Bye bye. Thank you, everyone.
I'll talk to you soon, Nelson.
Okay.
Okay.